Hey everyone, it's episode 13 of Wearable on Air. My name is Hillary Topper and I'm CEO of Public Relations in New York. Wearable on Air focuses on giving exposure to wearable companies and IoT. And today, Ranjit Steiner of LIM Innovations. Prosthetics have been around since the beginning of time. According to InMotion, an online blog, the first prosthetic was developed in 300 BC in Italy. It was made out of bronze, iron, and a wooden core. Although prosthetics have radically changed since 300 BC to lighter weight materials, it wasn't until now that the field has become disrupted with the introduction of the infinite socket, LIM's modular and customized socket that uses wearable technology and 3D printing. LIM also was recently featured, their product was featured in Wired magazine, which is really excited. And I want to welcome Ranjit to the show. Thank you so much. Why don't you describe the product to us?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. So the product's pretty complex. I actually have it here with me. I can just show you real quickly. There's lots of components. I'll just do a quick 360 of it, so you can kind of see the various aspects. Right there is sort of the most notable aspect as a patient, and you know, as a user, what we haven't had in prosthetics is adjustability and modularity in the components. So for me, when I put on my leg every day, you know, before I got the limb socket, you know, that's what I was stuck with, and I had to go throughout the day experiencing volume change, or throughout the month where, you know, maybe I would gain some weight or you know, get in shape. Really, was my biggest issue was that, you know, 6 months after my amputation, the original socket they gave me didn't fit me anymore because, you know, I was gaining weight from, you know, my workouts and training and whatnot, and, you know, I was stuck with this socket that just didn't fit properly. So you saw the buckle on there, which is basically taken from, you know, snowboard technology, and that's what we've done here at LIM, is sort of steal a couple ideas from different industries and put it together for, you know, a final piece that really works for the user and the clinician. And that adjustable buckle, along with some other components, the macro adjustments at the top, allow for me to see my prosthetist a little bit less and have, you know, an ideal fit from, you know, 8 a.m. till, you know, 12 a.m. the next night, or 2 a.m. the next night. Sometimes, you know, spending my entire day on my feet, I can now adjust, and my prosthetic can adjust with me as I change. And then over time, I can make those adjustments as well. And then from the clinician standpoint, you now have the ability to adjust all these other components. So we use thermoplastic carbon fiber, a soft goods brim at the top, which are all moldable with heat. So if a patient has some serious changes, undergo serious changes to their limb, which is really common, especially with, you know, diabetic patients, you'll see lots of weight fluctuation and volume change in the limb. So the prosthetist can basically take the struts, reform them, move them around. We have, you know, 40 degrees of pivot on each strut, 1 centimeter in and out of pivot. So there's just a lot that you can adjust on the fly and move with the patient, rather than having this rigid, you know, cast essentially that you know, I had prior to the limb socket, the infinite socket.
Now, you recently did a triathlon, and I read that you had never gone a 5K, and you were able to do that. How does this compare to the old type of prosthetic that you used to use? And how were you able to do? Would you have been able to do that 5K with the old one?
Actually, yeah, exactly. For running, I actually did use my old socket. It's a little more rigid, and we haven't really tested this to the point where we want patients running on it. It's actually an everyday socket, and the idea is, with knees and feet, you can change them out left and right. There's all kinds of different distal components for prosthetics. But the one thing that patients haven't been able to change out and have for different activities is the socket. So I was on the same socket when I was walking around, running, lifting weights. Everything I did was in the same socket. And the great thing about the infinite socket is that now we can, as amputees, we can have a different socket for our day-to-day life. And when we wake up in the morning and go to the infinite socket, but then when I'm out at the track, I can put on my more rigid socket that's not quite as comfortable, but it is a little more rigid and better for me at this point at running. And Limb does have the intention to make a high-performance socket and make something a little more aggressive that can get patients to higher activity levels. But right now our big focus has been on that comfort socket, that everyday socket that gets you through your day, and hopefully we'll convert those patients who are just trying to get out and live their life, get to work every day, into runners, and give them active lifestyles that a lot of them probably want.
So tell me, it seems to me like this is just revolutionary. Tell me how the infinite socket is changing the world or will change the world for people who need prosthetics.
I mean, I think I've touched on so much of that already with just my personal experience of being able to wear different versions for different activities, and for being able to have the socket change with you. We kind of have an analogy we like to use of the wooden clog versus the Nike running shoe. And the traditional socket is a lot like the wooden clog. It's this rigid shape that captures your limb at one point in time, but it doesn't adjust with you as you're moving, as you keep going. And that's where the Limb Innovations infinite socket is a lot more like a dynamic running shoe, where it can change with the patient. There's different components for different parts of the socket. So the same way there's a sole and different material used for the heel and the laces and front end of the shoe, the infinite socket uses multiple materials, multiple components to all come together to fit each aspect of your limb. And really, like I said before, our goal is to have a variety of different options for patients and tackle the need in the market, because people aren't wearing their sockets. A big issue is that patients have all the legs, all the feet that they need, but the one part that's still really lacking and prevents people from wearing their legs and living normal lifestyles is the socket. Because if that's uncomfortable, it's almost impossible to build up the courage to get up on your feet and put the prosthetic back on and get out the door and just live a normal life.
Let me ask you, so how can people find out about the infinite socket and LIM Innovations? Can you give them a contact information?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm more than happy to have people check us out online at liminnovations.com. We're all over social media, so check us out at Twitter, Facebook, and on LinkedIn, of course. But I'm also more than happy to have people email me directly. That's a big part of what we do is direct contact with consumers, with users and clinicians. So if anybody wants to find us, I think our emails are online. Otherwise, Steiner at liminnovations.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ranjit. Really appreciate you taking the time out to be on the show. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. Stay tuned for next week, and we'll see you again. Take care.